Welcome back, McFly subscribers. Last week I started a new series that is for the beginner tyer, and I started that series off with last week's video on what tools you need to start tying. As promised in that video, this week will be on how to use those tools. We will get into the video in just a second, but first, in case you haven't seen this channel before, this is McFly Angler.
Starts now.
Okay, let's get into it. The first thing you will need to learn is how to load your bobbin holder with a spool of thread. There are a few different types of bobbin holders, and this one here is the most common style. You want to pop the bobbin into the holder's hub like this, and then we need to get the thread through the tube. However, this is quite difficult with just pushing it up through. And unless your bobbin holder's tube is extremely smooth like this one, it can be actually impossible. So you will need a threader like this. Threaders are wire, so they are more stiff and will push through the end like this much easier. Then you simply put the thread into the loop made by the threader and pull the threader back through, which drags the thread with it. It's quite simple. Now, I actually do not use these threaders too often. I have a little trick to make this quicker. Wet the tip of the thread, and then just get it started in the tube, and then I suck the thread through. It's extremely quick. Here, let me show you this where you can see it. Wet the tip, start the thread, and then just suck it through the tube. See how easy that was? Here, a second time so you can see how easy it really is. I honestly never use the threaders anymore because this is so much quicker. Okay, here's another type of bobbin holder that some people like a lot. You want to unscrew the one end, then put the bobbin on the bare shaft, put the cap back on, and screw it in to your desired tension. You can make this super loose or super tight and anywhere in between. These are fine adjustment type bobbin holders that can be adjusted while tying a fly. You can adjust the standard style as well though. Give yourself a little extra thread, pop the bobbin out, then push the arms together for more tension or pull them apart for less. While this cannot be done on the fly, it is possible to adjust these to your desired tension. Okay, let's discuss the vise now. This vise is a Renzetti Traveler, so keep in mind that not all vices will be identical. This vise has a screw that you can remove the jaws with, and there are 3 holes to put the screw through. This adjusts the height of the jaws, which can be helpful when using the rotary feature on this vise. Some vices use other methods to adjust the height of the jaws. But let's look how these particular jaws work. There's a rubber gasket here that holds the tension of the vise jaws. Then the screw here tightens the jaw gap, and I will put this back in the center position for now. Alright, hopefully you can see the jaws tightening and loosening with the screw here. And this lever here, called a cam, is what actually does the final tightening, allowing you to use the cam to put the hook in and take it out. Okay, let's put a hook in the vise. You can see I use the cam to lock the hook into place. However, I put this hook in a bit too deep for the size of the hook. This does not give a lot of room to work around the hook. However, if I put the hook in too shallow, it will not hold the hook properly. You want that Goldilocks depth. Shallow enough to work around the hook, yet deep enough to hold it properly. And you want it right at the final bend before the hook point. Alright, let's look at this with a larger hook as things will change here. Of course, I'm adjusting the screw here since this is a thicker wire hook. And as you can see, I place this hook in a bit deeper. And I still have plenty of room to work around this larger hook, and there is enough purchase to hold in this heavier hook for tighter wraps. If I put a larger hook in closer to the tip, like I did with the smaller hook, it will move on the vise, which is not desired. The hook size and wire thickness will change how your hook gets placed into the vise. The shape of the jaws matter as well. These are considered more of a pointy jaw, which is better for more smaller hooks. They do make vices with jaws that are more rounded, which make putting on small hooks almost impossible, but really good for holding larger hooks more firmly. So that should be a consideration for which vise you choose to purchase. If you plan on tying only large streamers, then maybe look into a vise with a more rounded jaw. However, I have never had issues with this Renzetti holding hooks up to size 3/0. Let me show you how to easily adjust these jaws to our particular hook size. This one moved on the hook, so I will tighten this screw here, and now it holds it solid. However, with the same adjustment there, the finer wire hook moves as well, since the jaws are set to that heavier wire hook. So I have to tighten them here for this hook before putting the hook in. These rotary vices usually come with a few pieces that I don't have anymore, but the first one is a bobbin rest. When you have materials that you want to use a rotary feature to wind them onto your hook, you can make a quick half hitch or whip finish, then pull the thread out straight and rest it on the arm that sticks out from the bottom of the vise. Now it's shaped like this, and here is a picture of one from that risen vise. I will show you how this would be useful further in this video. Another thing that usually comes with these vises, but I unfortunately lost, is a material clip, which is basically just a small spring that sits on top of the vise right here. You can pull any material back and into the spring, which holds it out of the way, so you can tie without the material getting in your way. This is useful for when you need to tie other materials in before utilizing a previously tied in material. Okay, now let's talk about starting our thread. You're basically just wrapping back up over the tag end. So make one wrap around the hook, then start winding rearward towards the tag end. Now you can see that I can let go of the bobbin holder and it still holds on to the hook. Usually 3 to 4 wraps is good enough to hold it, but you can do more if you desire. Let me show you how to whip finish the fly once you're done tying. This here is a Mattarelli style whip finisher. Give yourself a little extra thread by pulling the bobbin out, hook the thread onto the top hook here, then wrap the thread around the bottom notch here. Turn your whip finisher around until you form a sideways number 4 with your thread. Make sure that the tag end of thread is up against the hook shank. Now use the tool to spin around the hook shank. You're wrapping around the tag end. You want to wrap from back to front every time you whip finish to get a proper seated knot. After you wrap at least 3 times, then turn the whip finisher to an upright position, which will release the thread from the bottom notch. Then pull on the tag end until the hook is touching the knot, and now you can pull the hook out, cut off the waist, and you just made a whip finish. Here, let me show you this up close. And here you can see starting your thread once again. Create the 4 with the thread and your whip finish tool, and here you can see what I mean by keeping that tag end of thread against the hook. If it's out a bit, it will move around, which makes a bad whip finish. Okay, you can see how when I wrap the whip finisher around the hook shank, it is also wrapping around the tag end of thread. This will create that knot. Release the thread from the notch, then pull the tag end until the hook is touching your knot, and pull the hook out. Then seat the knot, cut off the waist, and your whip finish is done. By the way, this is quite strong and will not come loose when done properly, even without head cement. Let me show you what happens when you whip finish from front to back though. Everything is done the same here, but as you can see, when I seat that knot, it bunches up and is not quite as smooth. It also makes it not as durable. I can just brush it with my fingers and the knot will come loose. And as you can see here, this is the one done properly, and it's not coming loose even with my fingernail picking at it. Here, let me show you how quickly these whip finishes can be done. And once you get the hang of them, they're extremely quick. In the latest video, I told you that I would show you how to whip finish with your fingers. Use 2 fingers and wrap the thread around them to create that 4 again with your thread. To do that, we need to turn our hand towards us by rotating around like so. Now we can then turn the thread up over the hook like this, but since our hand doesn't rotate like the whip finish tool, we need to turn our fingers around the other way to reset that into the starting position again. Then wrap over the tag end again, reset the fingers, and repeat until you made enough turns. Now we need to tighten up the knot, and we have this big loop. The best way to seat it is to grab your bodkin and use that to guide the knot down. Then you can pull the bodkin out and tighten the knot. Some people whip finish only with this method and not the tool. And if you want to learn this method, you can do that also, saving yourself a few bucks from having to buy the tool. However, I highly recommend still getting the tool as it is much more accurate and from my experience, much quicker as well. I do want to show you this technique up close. It's basically the same thing as with the tool. You're creating the same knot. And again, you want to go from back to front as always. Now I will show you all how to make a dubbing loop. In the last video I showed you a dubbing twister, and here is how to use them. First we want to create a loop by wrapping the thread around our finger, then wrap over the hook shank and around the thread to close it off. And place the dubbing twister into the end of the loop. Then I place one side of the loop around the screw here on my vise to make sure it stays open. Now you can place whatever material you want inside the loop, and in this case it's dubbing. Pinch right below the dubbing and spin the twister. When you let go of the loop, it will spin up that dubbing loop, capturing the material that you put in. Here, let me show you this with the other twister I showed in the video last week. This one has a ball bearing to twist up the loop instead of just spinning it. As you can see, this creates a hackle of sorts that you can just wind around the hook. which will create different bodies or collars on the fly. Now here I'm going to be using the rotary feature, which is spinning the thread up as well. And this means that I have to unwind my thread before capturing the loop. This is where that bobbin rest comes in handy. Well, anyway, you can see that this makes a nice little buggy body, and you can use more than just dubbing for different effects. Okay, let me show you how hackle pliers work. This is the back stem of the feather, and here is the front. However, I have this brushed out, so the fibers are sticking out. We will tie the tip in, and use the plunger style hackle pliers to grasp the hackle stem. Grab the tip, pull back some of the fibers, cut out a tie-in tag, and tie this in towards the rear of the section that you want to hackle. Here I'm going to strip off some fibers to expose the hackle stem so you can see this. Grasp the hackle stem with the pliers, then you can either wind this on by hand or use the rotary feature. The problem here is when using the rotary feature, the thread gets wound on. So just like I showed before, you need to use the bobbin rest or just unravel the extra thread. Capture the hackle, and now I formed a nice hackled body, almost like tying Griffith's gnat. Now this feather was long, so I could have just grasped it with my fingers. However, sometimes you get small little feathers that you really need to use hackle pliers for. Even though this is just for demonstration, I feel the need to clip off some unruly fibers and whip finish this. Okay, let me show you the English style hackle pliers that are to grasp the tip of the feather. We want to tie in some wire first. You will see why in a minute. Then we tie this in at the back end of the feather onto a bare stem. Now we can use these to grasp the tip of the hackle and wind on. However, this is a long feather, so let me grasp further down the feather so you can see what is happening. You can of course use the rotary feature for this if you want, or use the loop of the pliers to keep it rotating around the fly like so, winding on the hackle so it doesn't get twisted. Then we will use the wire to wind back up through the hackle to hold it into place. Capture the wire, helicopter the wire off, then cut the excess feather off the back. And there is the way to hackle the feather on from front to back. There are other ways to tie these hackles in, but these are the two most common, and a good demonstration for how these hackle pliers work. Okay, now let me show you the clamps. Here is a swatch of craft fur, and I am brushing it to align the fibers. Then I can use the clamp to grasp a specific amount of fiber, and I probably should have turned these around and used the offset angle. Oh well. Anyway, you get the idea here. I can then just cut this off the swatch, and I have a nice even layer of craft fur. If you get two clamps, and say you think that the fibers are too long, you can grab further up with the other clamp to shorten the fibers, and then cut them off at that length. Or if they're too short, grab further down with the other clamp, and cut them close to the end of the clamp. And here you can add the fiber to a dubbing loop and create a nice craft fur hackle. And here the ones from Risen do basically the same thing. And this is good to use for more than just craft fur. You can get a rabbit strip and clamp out the fur, then cut the hide off and use this for a dubbing loop or any other use. It even works for deer hair or any other fiber that you need a long, even bunch from. Now I'm not going to cut this off as that would be a waste, but you get the idea. Okay, let me show you the clips. I will first show you the Pettigene Magic Tool clips. It works for even rabbit strips. You push the strip into the larger base, and then you can use a clip to grasp the fur and cut the hide off, basically giving the same effect as the clamps. If you can't get the Pettigene clips, you can make your own system with notches in a foam block like this, then grab a chip clip and grasp the same way. You can use a feather as well. You can even do this with dubbing or any longer fiber material. And of course on the thinner notches here, you can do it with a feather on the foam as well. But that's the main idea of these clips. They just help gather materials, making it easier for dubbing loops and other techniques. Okay, now for the stackers. I'm going to cut off a clump of deer hair to stack. But first I want to brush out the underfur, and a simple comb will work perfectly. See all that fiber coming out? You want that gone before stacking. As you can see, the tips are all different lengths, and many flies need these tips to be aligned. So we can stack this clump in a stacker with the tips down. Tap this on your tying desk with a few firm taps. Pull them out of the stacker like this, and you can see how those tips are now aligned, which will give you a nice wing on a dry fly, or even a base or a collar when spinning deer hair bugs. This leg puller is a neat tool to get rubber legs through foam or deer hair spun bodies. Here's a foam popper called a crease fly. You stick the tool through the foam body, then put the tip of a rubber leg into the hole at the end of the needle here, pull it back through, and now you have some rubber legs in your poppers. Okay, and final thing I will show you today are these foam cutters. They come in many shapes and sizes. Here I have two types of Chernobyl ant bodies, and a custom one that I had made for a shrimp fly that I tie. Place a cutter pad down and foam on top, then push the cutter into the foam firmly until it cuts through the foam. When you pull it up, you can see that you have a perfectly shaped body. You can cut out multiple bodies before you start tying, ensuring that all your flies are uniformly shaped. Here, let me show you this on the other style of Chernobyl ant cutter. This one is round on both sides and has a little notch in the center so the foam doesn't get stuck up in the cutter. You have to cut this off to remove the foam from the sheet. And of course, let's see my custom one. This I use for the back of a shrimp I tie, but I hope this helps you understand what these cutters are about. Of course, not all these tools are items that you need or even should get right when you start tying. In last week's video, I went over which tools you must get before starting, and then listed a few tools that you might want to look into getting in the future. If you haven't watched that video, I suggest that you go watch it before buying any tools, as it will help you decide what you need to start with and what you should save up for in the future. Fly tying is kind of pricey to get into, so I hope this series will help you all figure out what you must spend money on and what you can hold off. And I hope this video helped you all learn the essential techniques like whip finishing and starting your thread. Now next week I will be going over a handful of materials that you should start with. Just like with the tools, there are many different materials out there, even more so with the materials. So make sure you're subscribed and click the bell notification so you don't miss any future videos like next week's video on starting materials. By the way, if you want to support this channel and also get some really awesome fly storage, please check out my fly boxes that I sell on Amazon with free shipping. I have 3 different types. One is magnetic backed and great for tiny nymphs and dry flies. Another is self-healing silicone back box with pre-made slots. This box is great for medium-sized to large nymphs and even small streamers. Both of these boxes are very thin, allowing you to fit them in shirt pockets or many in a chest pack. Then I have an all-foam fly box which will float if you accidentally drop it in the water. This has enough room in it to fit even large streamers. I will link below to all my fly boxes if you're interested in picking them up, and I try to keep the prices as low as possible, and the sales help this channel as well. Please check them out now on my Amazon storefront. I will see you on the next video. Now you go catch some fish.